Okay, so Naruto as a series has had plenty of villains, some iconic and some honestly extremely forgettable. But I think one thing that most people can agree on is that the Otsutsuki as a whole are terrible villains. Now, I've been following the Naruto franchise for over 10 years now. It's the first anime I've ever completed and the first manga I've ever read. So I think it goes without saying that I hold this story in an extremely high regard, and this extends to Boruto as well. In fact, back during the Dark Ages when it was popular to hate on Boruto simply because it wasn't Naruto, I was one of the few OG Naruto fans that stuck with it. I endured the trolling, the memes, the nitpicking, and the constant comparisons to other series. It honestly used to piss me off how fans of Naruto would hate the series simply because it wasn't Naruto's story anymore, instead of defending it from the countless other fan bases that were trashing it. All of this is to say that I have a huge place in my heart for the Naruto franchise, but I don't think anything has ever made me want to drop a story nearly as much as the Otsutsuki. And it's not because I think the show isn't about ninjas anymore, or because I think Madara is stronger than all the Boruto villains, or even that I think Madara should have been the final villain, or any other of the reasons that people usually bring up when talking about the Otsutsuki. Is because when you break it down, the Otsutsuki, and I mean every single one of them, with the exception of maybe Momoshiki, are terrible, boring, and meaningless villains. And this isn't just compared to other Naruto villains. I mean that they're so boring that if they were in any other story, I would not read it. Now, I know that you're waiting for me to explain myself, so let's just get into it. Starting with the first Otsutsuki that's introduced as a villain, Kaguya. Now, most people hate this character because she replaced Madara, a character who many viewed as one of the greatest villains in manga history. That's not why I hate her. I'm perfectly fine with villains being outdone by some secret mastermind. In fact, my favorite villains, like Aizen or Palpatine, or villains who were revealed later in the story to be the true villains after who we thought were the true antagonists were defeated. But the difference between these two characters and Kaguya is that they weren't defeated as quickly as they came. They had time to build them up as villains within the story. Their actions pushed, changed, and had lasting consequences on the protagonist. When it comes to Palpatine, the cartoons, novels, and comics add a lot of context to his rise in power. But when it comes to the movies, in the sequel trilogy for the first two movies, we know that there's a larger threat actively acting against the Jedi, but we don't know it's Palpatine. But we do feel that he's there. The movies take the time to build him up as a threat even before he's revealed as a villain. And by the third movie, when he finally strikes, it leaves a lasting impact on the protagonist and the world around them. Palpatine corrupts Anakin Skywalker, destroys the Jedi, and builds an empire. These actions even affect the next protagonist, Luke Skywalker. By the beginning of the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker is an orphan who doesn't even know his parents and doesn't know the true fate of his father. He lives in a galaxy ruled by Palpatine and doesn't realize that Darth Vader was corrupted by Palpatine. When it comes to Aizen, he fakes his death, traumatizes two side characters, kills the governing body of the Soul Society, and has already brought other captains of the Gotei 13 to his side while hiding how truly powerful he is. This all happens while Ichigo, the main character, is fighting who we think is the true antagonist in a bid to save his friend from a situation that Aizen secretly orchestrated. He later goes on to reveal life-altering secrets to Ichigo about how he impacted the circumstances of his birth, and their final battle leads to Ichigo sacrificing his powers. Granted, he gets them back, but that's not the point. The point here is that both these characters, even before they're revealed as villains, are already being established as a threat. The Jedi make mention of how there are always two Sith, a master and an apprentice, and they even mention how the galaxy is clouded by darkness. When it comes to Aizen, certain captains begin to realize how everyone is likely being manipulated and begin to investigate why these events are happening. This is all done before they're even revealed as villains. The story takes the time to build these characters, to make the audience believe they're a threat, and we don't need to be told they're powerful or that they existed thousands of years ago as some god. We can see by their actions and how they affect the world even before we know it's them. A good villain doesn't just challenge the protagonist physically, they leave a long-lasting effect on the main character and the world. If you're going to write a secret supervillain in the background, you have to add story threads that make it believable that they're more dangerous than the villain they're replacing. Both Aizen and Palpatine are well built up and leave lasting effects on the protagonist. The same can't be said for Kaguya. She appears basically from nowhere, and all we know about her before her arrival is that she's the one that introduced chakra to the world. She's an alien god or whatever, and she's the sage's mom. Oh, and she's also really strong and had to be sealed by the sage and his brother because she went crazy. While at face value, all of this might seem to build her up as a threat, in reality it doesn't. Everything she did happened hundreds of years before the main story, so the effects of her actions mean very little to the current conflict. In fact, Indra is implied to be a bigger reason for the current conflict than her. This is all made worse by the fact that all the background actions that lead to her reveal as the final villain weren't even done by her. It was all Black Zetsu's planning and scheming, so any foreshadowing to her return can't even be granted to her. If anything, I would have probably liked it more if Black Zetsu brought her back only to take over her body and become the final villain, because at least he was established as a villain. On top of all of this, for the brief amount of time that she is the final villain, she achieves literally nothing. She has almost no personality, so she's not a compelling villain. She leaves no lasting effect on Naruto or Sasuke, and her being revived wasn't even necessary to introduce the Otsutsuki in the sequel series, because whether she came back to life or not, Ishiki was already on Earth, Toneri was still gonna do his dumb moon plan, and Momoshiki would have still come to Earth. She achieves nothing for the narrative, and she wasn't even a slightly intimidating or compelling villain. She was basically a warm-up fight for the true final battle of the series. All she achieved was showing off how strong Naruto and Sasuke were, and the worst thing about her is her goal. All the other Naruto villains have compelling reasons for their goals. Nagato, Obito, and Madara want to end the cycle of hatred. Nagato wants to achieve this by making the whole world feel the same pain, while Obito and Madara want to put everyone in a dream and force peace onto them. Even older villains like Gaara wanted to murder everyone to prove his existence, because everyone only sees him as a weapon. Orochimaru wanted to learn every jutsu, so he chased immortality and steals the bodies of talented ninja because he fears dying before he can reach his goal. And what does Kaguya want? To eat a fruit. Everything she does in the story is so that she can make a white Zetsu army, so that the other Otsutsuki don't stop her from eating the chakra fruit. And what's the end goal, you might ask? To eat so many fruits that she eventually becomes a god. Okay, but why does she want to become a god? Well, obviously for the vibes. And this goal extends to damn near every other Otsutsuki that's a villain. It applies to Momoshiki, Kinshiki, Ishiki, and Urashiki. And hell, if Shibai is a villain, it probably applies to him too. On top of that, the problem of Kaguya only serving as an overpowered punching bag so that the main characters can have cool fights applies to all these characters as well. Again, with the exception of Momoshiki, but we'll get to that. Every single one of these Otsutsuki want more chakra and more fruits so they can get closer to becoming god, for no other reason than for the vibes. These characters have literally no impact on Boruto or Naruto as characters, and only exist for the sake of cool fight. Their character boils down to, I'm super strong and I want all the chakra, so I'm gonna fight you. And yes, this applies to Ishiki too. The only reason he builds Kara and gives Kawaki karma is so he can get a fruit. Now, I've mentioned a few times that I see Momoshiki as the exception. Well, that's because even though in the beginning he had this exact same problem, that was until he died and implanted karma on Boruto. Now he lives as a constant threat in Boruto's mind, and every time he shows up, he leaves a lasting impact. The first time he showed up serves to introduce the idea that Boruto could lose control at any moment, and boy, did he lose control. Because the second time he shows up, he literally stabs Sasuke in the eye and destroys his Rinnegan, permanently nerfing the secondary main character of the original series, and at the exact same time, permanently weakening the most powerful shinobi in the entire world. And yes, Sasuke was the most powerful ninja in the world right before getting stabbed. Naruto had literally just used Baryon mode and lost the Nine Tails. This not only permanently affected Sasuke, but left Boruto with the knowledge that his body was used to mutilate his idol and master, all because he lost control. The third time Momoshiki shows up literally pushes Kawaki to unlocking karma again, and leads to him gaining the power to seal Naruto away and pose a physical threat to Boruto after realizing that Boruto can't control Momoshiki and believing the only solution is killing him. The final time he ever shows up is to gloat to Boruto that he's lost everything after omnipotence was used to swap his and Kawaki's lives. And when Boruto doesn't despair like Momoshiki thought he would, Momoshiki throws a tantrum. This not only shows how cruel and vindictive Momoshiki is, but also how volatile he is. This sequence on its own does more to make Momoshiki an actual character than the multiple chapters all the other Otsutsuki had combined. On top of this, the fact that Momoshiki seemingly knows the future leaves a feeling of dread that even when he doesn't appear, he's simply waiting for the perfect time to cause chaos. This is why I think Momoshiki is the exception in a group of boring, meaningless, uninspired, and quite frankly, trash villains. And that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed my content, please like and subscribe. And if you have anything that you have to say about the video, whether you agree or disagree, leave a comment. I wouldn't mind seeing your thoughts. Bye.